All right, good afternoon. We are all set for the live broadcast stream of today's Louis Committee meeting, 6 p.m. on HPA-TV, Comcast, and Frontier Government Channels 96 and 6032. It will also be streamed via HPA-TV.org, the HPA-TV's Facebook page, and HPA-TV's Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon TV apps. It will also be rebroadcast and made available on HPA-TV's YouTube channel. So thank you all for joining us today for today's meeting. I'm going to announce everyone that is here. So first, we have Lydia Colon, who works in City Council. We have Councilwoman Surgeon.
Who's not a member.
Who's, well, I mean, yeah. And then we have voting member Councilman Gale. We have voting member Councilwoman Rossetti. We have Marlene Fleeting, who is the chair. Marlene Fleeting, who is the director of Human Resources. We have Miss Pam Ratty, who is the works with HR. We have Deb Carabillo, who also works in the HR department. We have our attorney from Corporation Counsel, Attorney Alexandra Lombardi, and HPA-TV. All right, so why don't we get started? So we have item 2.3, which has a public hearing on March 20th, 2023. Mayor Bronin with the accompanying ordinance amending the civil service ordinance. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to postpone that, Mr. Chair, until after the public hearing and to put this on the next agenda of this committee.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. So item 2.3 has been moved to postpone and properly second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So moved. Let the record reflect that item 2.3 is postponed till after the public hearing. All right. So we'll go to item 2.1, which is Mayor Bronin with a company resolution, which would approve a memorandum of agreement between the City of Hartford and Local 1716, ASME Council 4, Local 1716, increasing the compensation rates for the job classification of housing inspector. And we have our director, Marlene Fleeting, here to talk about the item. Ms. Fleeting, the floor is yours.
Actually, Deputy Director Carabillo will be speaking on this topic. Good evening.
All right, Deputy Director Carabillo, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for having me here tonight, and welcome back to another good memorandum of agreement that addresses some of the priorities that HR is working on in this last fiscal year. As we did a couple of weeks ago now, we brought a memorandum of agreement increasing the maintainer 3 and 4 salaries due to critical needs and recruiting efforts. This is another position that was identified as a critical position for a couple of reasons in this one. One, because we had a difficult time recruiting for this position. And additionally, because there have been some job changes as a result of ordinance changes. In particular, the citation issuance and enforcement. So we took this opportunity to work with the Department of Development Services to update the standing operating procedures to include those duties. We also did some comparability on the position, though this one, unlike the maintainer 3s, is a little bit more tricky to find comps on, because in some municipalities, the inspectors do everything. Whereas in the city of Hartford, we have housing inspectors, we have inspector 2s, and various other inspectors. So comparability was a little bit difficult, but we did find that we were behind other municipalities. And based on that and the citation duties and responsibilities, we updated the standing operating procedures. We made changes to minimum qualifications. And now we're coming to you with a adjustment to their salaries. So today their max salary is $61,620. If approved, their maximum salary will be increased by 8% to 66,547. Like with the maintainer 2 agreement that we brought to you a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, these employees in this classification would also be eligible for the 2.5% in July. So between the 8% increase that we're proposing today and the additional 2.5% increase that they'll receive in July, this will bring us to be more competitive with some of the towns similar in size to us or near us. It won't get us completely there, but at least it gets us closer. So I'll answer any questions that you might have.
All right, the floor is open. Yes, Councilman Gale.
Sure, define closer if you would, Ms. Carabello.
Sure. So again, like I said, I can't say that all of these positions are exactly the same as our housing inspectors because some of them are definitely smaller in size. But Bridgeport right now, they're always significantly higher. I'm not quite sure why. Their maximum is approximately $85,000. New Haven is $70,000. So that's a little bit closer to where we are going to be. Mansfield is approximately $70,000. New Britain is $74,000. Middletown again is a little much higher, $80,000. And East Hartford is $68,000. So
And
again, it's
where
all
will we be?
We would be at 66,547 before the 2.5% in July.
Okay, so lower than all of those towns that you mentioned.
Yes, but at least we were 61 before, so at least we're getting there. We've got to keep working on it. But yes, it's a step in the right direction.
And do I understand that in some towns, you did mention something about, we don't have sort of this cross training where a housing code inspector can also be a building code inspector. On some of these where you're comparing us, or some of these other folks have expanded duties beyond just housing code enforcement?
It's really difficult to tell from just a contract or basically from their contracts. And we don't have the physical job description. All we have is their contract at this time.
Okay.
But in this particular case, the housing inspector is 1716 and the inspector 2s are HMEA. So that's also they're different unions. I'll just leave it at that.
Do we have any kind of an in-house training program for creating a housing code inspector?
We don't have an in-house training program. I don't believe. I think there have been some discussions to work with various companies to look at this, but not for housing code, no.
So when you say there may have been discussions, are those discussions that might be aimed towards getting an in-house program for training housing code inspectors?
I am not part of those conversations at this point, so I can't really speak to what those are.
Who would be part of those? Who would we talk to if we wanted to find out more?
I think Development Services has looked into some items. It might be Randall or Charles.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more question, if I may, Mr. Chair. You mentioned, at least I think you mentioned, kind of redefining the job qualifications. I don't know if that was actually in the changed memorandum or if that's outside of it. But talk to us about what the current job description has been and what how it's going to be changed.
Okay, it has already been changed, and that has helped us to fill all of our positions. Give me a second. Minimum qualifications have to be negotiated with the union. So we did go to the union a while back when we were having difficulty recruiting for this position, and we changed the job spec. I don't remember off the top of my head what we did. If you can give me a moment, or I can send it to you.
Take some time. Some time to look at it. I know we've had, and I'm thrilled to hear you say that these positions have been filled, because I know quite recently, there was a discussion at council and some dismay, concern that, there were, I forget the number, whether it's 10 housing code enforcement or 11 positions, and many of them were still vacant. And this at a time when we were having some, real problems with landlords. So, yeah, if you're able to find that, that would be great.
Sure. Yes, we have 13 housing code inspectors, and all 13 now are filled. Last two just finally, I think they started a week or two ago. So they are all filled, I'm happy to say. So if you give me a moment.
Love the good news. Love great news.
So do we.
I see the director taking a big sigh of relief over there.
Yes, I am. We worked really hard. The team works tirelessly here to try to do the best that we can to recruit and actually retain. And it's been a struggle. And so I appreciate so much what the team has done. So we are very excited about all the positions being filled there.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And great job. Great job, team. Director Fleeting, while I have you and while Ms. Caraballo is looking for that, I wonder if it strikes me that because of the major changes that we made to the housing code a couple of years ago that are going to require more and more landlords to go through the process of registration and inspections of their units, I believe that ordinance also kind of built into it addition of more housing code inspectors. Am I correct about that?
I have to double check the numbers to see. DDS may have received a couple, but I'm not sure. I'll let you know though. I can find out.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do know we were at 11 and then there were two more, bringing it to 13.
Okay.
Maybe the two that were added already.
I don't know if there's any more that they've proposed for this budget, but there were 11 and then two were added and now we're at 13.
Okay, great. Were you able to find those?
Yes, I was. So basically, previously it required that they have a high school degree supplemented by 2 years of college. We kept college in, but we provided for equivalency that they previously didn't have. So now someone who doesn't have any college can be hired as a housing inspector if they have relevant experience instead.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We lost him.
I'll recognize Marilyn.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Councilwoman Rossetti.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you very much. Thank you. Ms. Caraballo, I can't say it as well as Councilman LeBron. I apologize. First of all, did you have a birthday?
Oh, yes, I did.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
It's kind of a weird question because I'm thinking about what you said when you said one town was 80,000. We don't really know why. But do we know if all the salaries are in that higher range? So is it because all the salaries are in a higher range, or is it just that position? Or is there a way for us to do some recon and find out why these towns are paying? I mean, I know it's about how much money you have, but clearly they have some of the same issues we have. Are they making it a priority? What is it that drives them that they're able to pay so much more?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. With Bridgeport, I can speak because I've done a lot of comps with Bridgeport, and it just seems Bridgeport salaries are just higher.
Overall?
Ours in general, overall, just about every single position that we've seen. So I do know for that particular one, we kind of see that across the board every time we go to Bridgeport, where Waterbury has a tendency to be a little bit lower than ours. For some of the others, like I said, without getting their job description or having a conversation with maybe their director, which sometimes is easier said than done. We don't know if it's the housing inspector just doing housing, or if they need assistant building official certification or something, some sort of certification that ours don't require, or if it requires them to do more building inspector work. We don't know that just from the contracts we receive.
So there's no, again, through you, Mr. Chair, and I won't belabor this, there's no belabor it, get it? And we're in that. There's no friendly town reciprocation on giving us each other's, it's not like there's something hidden in that. Is there a way to just ask for them?
We do ask for them, and sometimes we get them and sometimes they don't, or we'll say, do you have something comparable to a housing inspector? And they'll say, we don't have this. I can say, I did not pull these comps. I think it was a combination of management and budget, and DDS provided us with some of the comps. So I personally haven't seen anything or talked to anyone personally about these.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Carabello. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilwoman Surgeon, do you have any? Yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You said there were 2% increases coming up. With the 2% increase, what will that make the base pay be?
That's weird. Oh, let me see. You want to know what the base will be?
Well, no, you said they're
The
going to be in another couple of months, it will increase with a 2%.
I thought I had it on this page.
That's okay. Take your time.
Let me see. This is just an approximate number, but 68,200.
Okay, so we're fairly close to New Haven and Middletown of 70.
Yes, in East Hartford of 68.
And East Hartford. Okay, all right, that's pretty good.
And I think it was Mansfield and New Britain who were 70. Middletown was 80.
Middletown was 80. Okay, I know it was somebody 70.
Yes. Yep.
70. Okay, all right. So when you look at your job description for housing inspectors, inspector 2, housing, all the housing inspector's position or any position to do with housing, could you pull all those job description and see, I know that I remember you just said that inspector 2 is a MIA, so that's probably a higher position.
Yes, it's in our supervisory unit.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things, jogged my memory when Councilman Gill talked about cross-training, and providing information of, successive training. So if somebody wants to go up to an inspector 2 position, what would they need? Do we provide that information to staff so they will have something to, try to attain, work towards?
I don't know if they're providing anything to staff, but I know at least the administration in DDS is very vocal and looks for ways for people to have upward mobility. Again, we've made changes to the inspector 2 classification so that people don't necessarily have to have their assistant building official certification at the time of hire, and it gives them an opportunity to do that. Again, when Councilman Gale was asking about training, I think the department is looking into something for that as well, for assistant building official classes, so that maybe employees that are already employed in DDS could take those classes or get some training so that they'd be prepared to take those classes. So I think those items are being discussed and looked at in the department at this time. But again, I'm not part of those discussions at this moment. I mean, HR might be brought in at some point when they have some definitive plans, but at the moment we're not. But I hear, when I have conversations with Randall or Charles, they do talk about that quite a bit. So I know they're thinking about it.
What is the reimbursement if a staff wants to go and take some, college training or any sort of certificate program? What is a reimbursement rate to the staff?
I believe that we have $20,000 in the budget on a fiscal basis. And so it depends on the number of people who apply for reimbursement and how many people pass and then submit their grades. So there's no fixed dollar amount. It really depends on the funding and how many people put in an application for tuition reimbursement.
And have we used up all of it? At any year in the past, you have used all 20,000? And is it just only for college, or could it be a certificate program?
It's predominantly college, but I think that there is something about certificate if it's related to your job or something along those lines, but predominantly it has been college.
Right. So I know you said in one of the job clarification that changed was 2 years of college and equivalent to number of years experience. How many years experience was that to be?
When we did the equivalency, so you can have graduation and 2 years of graduation from high school, 2 years of college and 2 years of experience, or you could have graduation from high school and 5 years of experience.
So you're looking for 5 years experience?
Without the college, yes.
And someone with a high school and 5 years experience in that field of housing inspector, would that person, a 68,000, in your opinion, 68,000 sufficient for that pay scale? Because when I look at other towns who are paying a lot higher, what are they requiring for education or experience?
I don't have the answer to that.
Okay. Could you look into that and let us know?
Sure.
Great. Thank you. And I
You're
just
welcome.
also want to also commend you guys on filling the housing inspector's position. I think with DDS and the Blight Division changing their ordinance or new ordinance for inspections for, housing going up, then, I know that's going to make a difference. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Phone is ringing. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon. Okay, so seeing no other folks, I'll take the chair entertain a motion.
Move that we send this back to council with a favorable recommendation. And
Second.
Any
with commendations to HR for all of the great work that's been done.
great commendations. Yes, celebration. All right, so we have a motion made and properly second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, let the record reflect that the motion has been sent back favorably to council. All right, so we'll move on to item 2.2, which is Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon and Majority Leader Thomas Clark, a resolution calling for the city of Hartford to look into creating an HR trainee program. All right, Councilwoman Surgeon, would you like to take the floor?
Sure.
Or how do you want, or Director Fleeting? How do we want to do this?
But
It's
maybe
up to
I should tell the director my thoughts in
yes.
sponsoring that resolution.
Absolutely. The
As
floor
a
is
state,
yours.
yeah, thank you, sir. Through you, Mr. Chair. As a retired state employee, the State Department have training programs similar to this in their HR department. So therefore, as you have longstanding individual in your department, if you're looking at succession plan, retirement a year or two out, you start beginning training. Again, this is all about succession training in each department and starting with HR. Now, as you spoke about several of the division thinking about doing a training or cross-training plan, this is what that I envision, something that could start being done, because I do know that, with your limited staff, you guys are really, pressed for a lot of things. So that was the thought behind that resolution, and trying to be innovative as much as possible, seeing that we have to compete with the state and other towns for qualified individuals.
Yes. So thank you for that, Councilwoman Surgeon. One thing that, and I did read the resolution and everything, and I totally agree with you. One thing I would just like to know is that here in HR, we pretty much have a program like that. We just don't call our analysts trainees because they are in fact our trainees. They come in, there is no experience necessary. They have to come in with the degree, but they don't have to have any amount of experience. So we train them up. They sit with a more senior level analysts, and then they learn all about HR here for the city of Hartford. They learn about the civil service, the whole thing. They learn about labor, different parts of labor. So they learn about everything. And then in a year, they're able to qualify for the next level up. So they're able to qualify for a senior HR analyst. And then another year after that, after sitting and learning with other senior level analysts, they're able to now go up to a principal analyst. So the hierarchy is they're starting fresh from scratch as an HR analyst, and then they're continuing a year later. If everything goes well and they're succeeding well, they go up to a senior, and then a year after that, they have more up under their belt, more seniority and more knowledge of the department in the city. Then they go to a principal level. After a principal level, then it's a human resources administrator. And so we have that level of succession and upward mobility that I've been a part of, and I'm glad to say, along with my assistant director Pam and the deputy Deb, that we've been able to have people come in brand new. The department is fairly revamped and new, and a year later become a senior analyst. And we have right now 2 senior analysts, and they came in, started a year later. We didn't wait, because we felt that they were ready. They were ready, and they demonstrated that with their knowledge and things that they've shown us. So we didn't say, oh, you got to wait another year or whatever. We quickly did it. We had the final eval a year, and it was like, okay, let's move them up. And so we do work hard with that. And so we don't call it a trainee, but it is a trainee.
So you said if a person coming in with a degree.
Yes.
So is it a high school degree, college degree? What is the degree? It's a college degree.
Yep, a bachelor's degree.
It has so you have to have a bachelor's degree to start as a analyst 1.
Yes.
Okay. And in the last couple of years, since you already have this position, how many people you would say has gone through this whole process?
That's here right now. I would say, Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have 2 that's here right now. We've had more in the past, but they've moved on. But we
have lost people.
Mm-hmm.
3 if you count me. I was just going to say.
I did I'm so right. I am so sorry. That is perfect. I'm so glad you said that. Pam was a perfect example, and I probably forgot that because I wasn't here when Pam was hired. I wasn't in HR, but Pam was hired as an analyst, right? Hired as an analyst. She went to senior analyst, then and moved up and had, and was a human resources administrator, and now she's the assistant director. So she's a perfect example of that.
This is exactly what I want to hear. Pam, congratulations.
Thank you.
You are a wonderful example of successful training for the department. I wish we had more people like yourself. So, Director Fleeting, you should take that concept and bring it, working with the unions, and bring it, because you have a success rate here of how the program is working. The only problem I see is that, when we're kind of like a feeder city. We train, we bring people in, we train them, and then, when we lose them. So Pam, I hope we don't lose you.
She's not going anywhere, Councilwoman Surgeon. If she goes, she's gonna go years, from over that side over into my chair.
Because you get to know the administration so well after working with a company for so many years, and you may have things in writing, but historical knowledge is amazing. What is not in writing. So I hope we don't lose you, and I look forward to your next advancement in the city. But I would ask the Director Fleeting to sort of take those programs that you have started and working with the divisions that are having a really hard time attracting individuals, and maybe working with the unions, because that's what the state did. They work with all the unions, because the unions agreed because, you're bringing people in and to pay union dues. So they're
Right.
not going to say, no, we don't want to do this. So it's a great opportunity, for people to come in, and they will pay the union dues. And, I think this opens up to more Hartford residents. A lot of our kids go off to college, and I'm preaching here, but don't mind me, and come back home. Director Fleeting, you have been here for similarly.
22.
Exactly, go off to college and come back home and don't have the opportunity, So this is a great opportunity. You guys should promote this and market this more.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so very much for doing that. That's it, Mr. Chair.
So, Councilwoman Surgeon,
Yes.
the question that I have is, what do we want to do with this resolution? Do we want to bring it back? Do we want to keep it on? What do you want to do with it, ma'am? You
So
want to withdraw?
basically, it was just, I'm looking for a presentation, which she did. If you want to have a formal presentation that we can adopt and send it back through council. But I think the department has a great example, not using the correct terminology. Instead of using, trainee, using analyst. So, Dr. Feeney want to give us something in writing so we can adopt that presentation that we verbally spoke on, and we can send it back to council.
Okay.
And favorably, I would hope.
Okay. So
With
that
that, Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to move to send it back favorably to council.
absolutely.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and properly second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right. So let the record reflect that we sending it back favorably. All right, we have one more item on the agenda. And so Lydia, where are we with that? Item 2.4, it was presentation by Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez.
I'm currently trying to get a status.
Okay.
If you want to just give me a minute.
Sure. So why don't we give it, the superintendent's super busy these days, and we all kind of know what's going on with the state of the Board of Education right now. And so as a result, the superintendent felt like it was very timely to come talk during our committee meeting. She comes regularly, like every quarter, or at least beginning to. And so this is the opportunity for her to come. And so let's see where we are and circle back. We'll give her another minute.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I ask the director a
Sure.
question?
Yes,
Great.
absolutely.
Well, I'm going to give the director a little heads up for this upcoming budget process so she can get started. Because one of my budget questions is going to be, using the terminology of all the inspectors. You have inspectors in health, all these different positions in different departments. One of the things I'm going to ask for at the budget hearing is comparing all these inspector positions, whether from health or DDS, and find out the similarities, what we can do. So it's a heads up for you. So you got a couple of weeks.
I'm sorry, you would like to have all the inspectors, DDS and health
Department,
and their
their job description, and compare the job descriptions.
Okay.
Superintendent is here, so that was it.
Hello, Superintendent. How are you this evening?
It is good to see everyone. I am doing
Yes.
well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I know these days are busy. So just want to acknowledge the HR team, and, you guys are welcome to stay for the presentation, but I think we postponed the other items. So you're more than welcome to stay. So Director, hello and welcome to our March Labor, Education and Workforce Development meeting. And so the key part of that is education. And so we welcome you to come. There's been a lot of news that is in the papers and in the media and so forth. And I believe you had a forum last week for families and community members. So we want to allow you the opportunity to have the floor to discuss what's going on with the Board of Education.
May I
So
just
the
say
floor
one
is yours.
thing? I'm
Yes.
sorry,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Superintendent. I just wanted to acknowledge everyone and say thank you so much for tonight. I did let Lydia know I am really not feeling well, so we won't be staying on. With all due respect to Ms. Torres, I want to say thank you so much for everything that you've done for the city and that you continue to do with your staff. It is so much appreciated, and kudos to you. I'm really not feeling well, and I need to get off. And again, thank you all for everything. And thank you, Ms. Torres, too.
No
Okay.
problem. Thank you, Director Fleeting,
Thank
for all
you.
you do.
All right.
Superintendent, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. And may I share my screen?
Yes, you should be able to. Tell me if you're not. Let me make you the host. Okay, hold on. There you go. You should be okay now.
Thumbs up if you can see the screen.
Mhm.
You can see the screen. Thank you. Okay, so again, thank you for inviting me to have this opportunity to give an update. And I'm going to specifically talk about student engagement, financial sustainability, school safety, preparation, and some social emotional supports for students, and trying to be responsive to some of the questions that came up last time. And so there's a little bit of
It's a
everything.
broad range.
Yes,
It's
I'm
a
going to
broad
try.
range.
I will follow your
and
lead.
respectfully, yes,
I'll
thank
follow
you.
your lead in terms of the time. So yeah, an overview of what I'm going to be speaking about tonight. The tiered system of supports for our students after our budget. I'll speak about that. Personnel policies and some partnerships, and then protocols and trainings as well. So I'm going to start with some of the technical pieces, the facilities and budget. So one of the most significant aspects, I would say, of our strategic plan is having a more robust system of extracurricular activities. That includes our athletic offerings at all of our high schools, and a continuum of sports extending into our middle schools. We feel that this is crucial to for our students to form connections and to also begin to create a sense of school spirit and community, and increase our competitiveness as we seek to recruit and retain students in our school choice ecosystem. And we also know that we have some incredible athletes that deserve to be celebrated across our city. And I am now happy to say that every one of our high schools offers interscholastic sports, and that every one of our middle schools offers sports that include basketball, volleyball, and soccer. And we are extending that into our elementary schools to not only better engage our younger students, but also to prepare them, right, to compete at a higher level. And that is something that was just not the case in Hartford Public Schools, right, when we think about 5 years ago. And so we're slowly, right, we've grown, and we continue to expand into the lower grades. And we're now able to welcome our parents, our caregivers, students, and other fans back into our facilities to cheer on for our teams. And this really has created an exciting atmosphere during the regular season, especially during the playoff and the tournament games. And I don't know how much our community knows about this, but we do also have co-op teams like the SMSA, Sports and Medical Sciences Academy football team, which is on the picture here. They have a group that has students from across the schools. And so they play not only right at their home games, but their playoff games also at the Weaver football field. And that I wanted to lift because it does speak to how our facilities are used by multiple members in our community when necessary. And all of this, right, is also to say that our sports facilities are now being utilized fully and for their intended purpose, right, to celebrate our athletes and create a welcoming and exciting atmosphere for our entire community. I know there's a lot of text here, but essentially it's just to lift that in addition to our facilities being used for our athletic offerings and competitions, we have been able to reintroduce performing arts since, right, we've now moved past COVID restrictions, and that includes opportunities to celebrate our performances at our Kinsella Magnet School for the Performing Arts, right? They have an incredible black box theater, plays from students at Classical Magnet, and other theatrical performances organized by community partners like Hartford Performs, and right, those are accessible to our students and families. And we also, our schools host before and after school, right, extended day programming for students from our community partners like Catholic Charities, the Village, Blue Hill Civic, the YMCA, and others. And that takes place at 28 of our schools on a regular basis. We also have other organizations, right, Hartford Hurricanes, youth football, 2-for-1 Sports, Active City, Impact Church, regularly using our facilities to provide services to the community during after school hours, on weekends, during our summer recess. And so our facilities, right, have extensive use, but are also used on an event by event basis for town halls, neighborhood meetings, performances, political forums, if you will. So again, multiple, right, use of our facilities throughout the city. I didn't check with you, Chair, and I apologize for process. I'll kind of continue through the
Sure,
presentation. Is
yeah.
that okay? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And we'll just save the answers for the end. I mean, the
Okay,
questions for
the
the
questions?
end. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll shift now to the budget, and this is being mindful that I will have a more extensive presentation to the council in the months to come. But on March 7th, the Hartford Board of Education voted to adopt our school budget for next year after several community forums, school governance council trainings, public board meetings and hearings, and the mitigation of a previously projected $24 million deficit through measures that are highlighted here on the slide. This is a high-level overview that the mitigation components that we've outlined, right, would increase our revenue to $429.4 million, which assumes a very conservative vacancy estimate of 6%. Currently, we are at an 11% of vacancy rate. And right, the Municipal Accountability Review Board, what was presented, right, was a 5-year fiscal outlook showing that, suggesting a flat funding for the district. And so we've taken all of that into consideration. Another item to the budget that was asked for prior to this meeting is the central office move to another working space while the completion of the Buckley High School construction is on their way. And so to expedite the completion and to help, right, get our students back into the building by the 2025 school year, the central office staff will be relocated pending approval to 280 Trumbull Street for 2 years while the roof and the walls at our current location, 330 Weathersfield, are completed. And this location was identified because of the efficient rate per square footage that we were able to acquire, the need for parking, and very importantly, the need to have ground level space for the Welcome Center so that they can continue to provide services to our families. The cost for the new space is $1.4 million over the course of 24 months, including parking and almost like a plug and play, if you will, with furniture. And this is a cost savings compared to the former lease at 960 Main, which was about $1 million a year. So even though we have to make another move temporarily to, relocating Buckley has resulted in the significant savings of over $2.5 million so far. So I just wanted to make sure that, I responded to, because that was a specific ask that came in. I'm sure some of you know that Hartford Public Schools has a unique financial setup. especially given the, right, so we are the largest sending district, given the chef stipulation, within this ecosystem of school choice that we are operating in. So I'm going to use the 2022-23, the current budget, as an example, because I want to show how we allocate our resources. So the pie chart on the left shows the overall budget, with the biggest, right, the biggest piece there, the green piece, representing the money that we invest in school-based programming. That includes salaries, materials, instructional supplies. The second biggest piece of this pie is the light blue piece, which represents the tuition that we pay for Hartford resident students that pursue school options outside of our district, right? That includes CREC and Learn and other magnet operators. So when a Hartford student leaves the district, right, we pay general education tuition to that school operator, which is subject to increase. And we are seeing an increase, actually, by one of the operators. And as we see in special education costs, right, that special education costs are associated as well. Transportation fees are associated as well. So that overall tuition cost has grown from 9% of the overall budget back in 2016 to almost 24% of our overall budget this year. That's a significant increase. And that's money that is no longer available for us to invest in the students that are attending or remaining, right, in our schools. So to help mitigate this growing cost, right, we are in support of House Bill 5003, which would eliminate the general education tuition billing to create a more cohesive and transparent system. And that would amount to approximately $24 million if it's enacted in the accelerated timeline that it's proposed to do. Now, I just told you in the previous slide, right, that we have, for example, we mitigated a $24 million deficit for next year. The huge cost driver in our district is a result of a high concentration of need that results in higher special education costs. One of the biggest problems we have is that there is a $95 million gap for special education through our current revenue streams, as indicated. If you see, that's the bar that you see to the right, right? Those revenue streams include the ECS grant, the Education Cost Sharing Grant. And although the funds are they're not restricted or designated in any way, the State Department of Education has long held the notion that 22% of that ECS grant is meant to support special education, even while more students identify as needing special education services. So the other significant portion of special education revenue that I'll point to is the excess cost grant, which is, it fluctuates. It's so volatile because of the way that the grant is structured, in that there is this expense hurdle that you have to clear before there's any reimbursement at all from the state, right? The state, and I don't want to get into the details, but the state has a specific metric, and it's kind of like a rough measure of how a district spends per student. Although there are some adjustments in that not every expense is counted. So for us, in 22-23, this current year, that metric expenditure per student is $23,789. As it pertains to that excess cost grant, there are two funding tracks for, one track is for students that are not placed in Hartford Public Schools by DCF, and the other track is for students that have been placed in our district by DCF. And so, just to give you a picture of how challenging it is for us to kind of get over that hurdle before we can begin to get reimbursed, the hurdle rate for non-DCF students is 4 times the metric, or $107,000. That means, if I use that figure, right, that Hartford Public Schools must spend more than $107,000 on a student before that grant kicks in. So if our cost for a specific student were $120,000, the eligible expenses are almost $13,000. However, we won't get reimbursed the full value of the eligible expenses, because that grant, it has a clause in the legislation that limits it, like the extent of the appropriation. And the maximum that we could receive is about 75% of what we could submit, right? What we would submit for. So we're left to pick up the middle piece, right, of that, the remaining piece of that. Now it's different for a DCF student, but I wanted to highlight the challenge that it poses for us, right? And the gray portion that you see on this bar graph here represents the amount that we need to fill on an annual basis from other revenue streams, right? That large amount that the district pays for special education, it impacts our ability to provide or invest in what we call tier 1 services. Those are services that should be available and accessible to all students across all of the schools. And it does present a systemic inequity when compared to, right, our neighboring districts. And while we were essentially able to balance the budget for this year, it's important to note that the struggles that we're facing this year will continue and potentially accelerate moving forward. As it has been true in the past, our expenses outpace the projected revenue that we receive. And one of the drivers of the increased expenses is a function of just inflation and operating costs, salaries, materials, etc. And also some structural challenges, right? I just spoke about special education funding. There's also the cost of outplacing students that, right, who have extensive needs that we just cannot meet internally, and costs that we bear as part of the choice ecosystem, right? If a magnet operator places a student in an outplacement facility, right, we're responsible for those costs. And related to inflation, right, if we use the standard 3% inflation, we would see an increase in expenses of about $13 million with our $430 million budget. So even if funding stays flat, right, we know that we're going to be chasing that inflationary costs in every year that comes. And regarding Chef, there will be, there's a likelihood, that will have a significant impact in our expenses as more resident students explore options through open choice and the regional school choice system. I'll get into that actually in an example here, because right, declining enrollment is something that urban school systems are facing across the state and even across the country. So it's natural, right, for folks to assume that, hey, a flat revenue, decreased enrollment, that should lead to some savings, right? It makes sense to think of it that way. However, based on, right, some of the previous slides that I shared, I hope that there's maybe a better understanding of the costs that remain the responsibility of Hartford Public Schools, right? Right sizing in a school system context is challenging generally because of the number of what we call like sticky system costs that can't easily be reduced. When enrollment loss happens steadily and it's spread across our schools, it has, as it is in our system, it can be even more difficult. So if we look at it from a student perspective, right, Michael is the student. we're not, right? Michael is in a class with Ms. Graves of 24 students, and she now has 23 students, right? Because Michael was in Hartford Public Schools and now is enrolled in a CREC or some other magnet school, right? For the next school year. So the teacher and the 23 remaining students, right? The teacher still has to stay there at the same salary, benefits, professional learning, support services. Michael would have been a bus rider that picked him up at a stop near his house. But that bus, even though Michael is not there, that's a reduction in a student. The bus still has to run because there are other kids in that route, right? Fewer kids, but still the kids have to get picked up. So we have to still pay for that bus. Michael would have attended an after-school program with 50 other students this year. But let's say only 46 kids attend. There's an enrollment decline, but the CBO, the community-based provider, still has to staff, right? Those 2 staff members to provide programming for the kids that remain, even though there's less kids, right? So Michael attends another CREC magnet that charges us $6,500 to support his general education services. We pay that, even though Michael's absence, right, has not resulted in any real savings to the district. As just an example of, right, the thinking that less students, flat funding should be okay, or that there should be a savings because you have less students, doesn't necessarily play out for us, right? We're not able to make the reductions in costs at the same pace as the enrollment loss. And as part of an analysis, and this is an analysis that I did last year, we found that Hartford could lose up to 1,300 students over the next 10 years as part of the recent chef settlement, right? Without school consolidation and with enrollment loss evenly distributed across schools, right? Hartford could reduce teacher staffing only by $1.5 million, but we would lose 30 million over that 10-year period in tuition costs. So, right, we know also that from the consolidation and the reconfiguration work that we started doing in 2018, that is not easy for communities, right? That was really hard for all of us as a community. It's challenging, it's disruptive to students and families, and it's only a partial fix and really only puts like a temporary Band-Aid on the longer challenges because they are structural funding challenges. Okay, so I'm going to shift now to the focus on school safety and security. And I'm sorry that there's like such a quick pivot, but I'm trying to be responsive to the requests and the topics that came in. A lot here, but I'm going to kind of summarize that we have a multi-tiered system of supports that provides our educators with a system of strategies to help students experiencing learning, social, emotional, attendance, and behavioral difficulties. We call that MTSS, multi-tiered, because, right, depending on the level of student need, as they kind of go up the tier based on their need, additional services and supports are provided. And it provides a structure toward which our students also can access supports. We believe in providing services to the whole child, right, academically, and in terms of their social, emotional wellness. And some of the strategies, right, are listed here. These are ways that our schools are supporting youth in staying engaged so that they feel that sense of connectedness and belonging to school. We believe that these practices are foundational to making our students feel comfortable and welcomed inside and outside of the classroom so that they have the skills and the knowledge, right, and the ability to succeed and thrive later in life. We also address this work in a preventative manner. And for example, the Sandy Hook Promise, Erin's Law, and Science of Suicides, all of that, those are examples of tier 1. That we want all of our students to have access to. A few specific strategies that I want to lift from our framework here. The code of conduct which provides consistency regarding the disciplinary actions across the district. But I want to note that we are constantly evaluating this resource, the Code of Conduct, to ensure that it provides the support needed for teachers and students, and that it does that in a culturally appropriate and equitable way. And our staff also receive training on restorative practices and trauma-informed discipline, right? Leveraging strategies like circles, one-on-one discussions, and class agreements to uplift and reinforce expectations. And like I said, as students move through the tiers, the interventions, the supports become more targeted and focused on individual students. I want to be clear that, you know, the MTSS is a lens with which we approach mental wellness for all students within Hartford Public Schools, and also how we expect our staff to support students in healthy development, which leads to better behavioral outcomes, right? We have concurrent systems in place to address students that have mental health needs. I'm not going to be covering that tonight, but if that is a presentation and information that is necessary, I certainly want to do that. I just want to make sure that I clarify that that is not what this presentation is about in terms of those, you know, the mental health needs and the supports. This visual here shows that interconnectedness of our school-based staff and the district level staff as it relates to safety, crisis response, preparation, and really partnership with the community to ensure that the needs of our students and everyone are fully understood, and that also inform our support system, right? Information shared between these two components of essentially the same team, not two separate teams. It's crucial to making sure that students and staff are safe and have a sense of security when they're engaged in teaching and learning, and when they're, you know, engaging in extracurricular activities. An expanded version of this safety information and the slides to follow has been presented to our school leaders and assistant principals by our district safety leaders. We have taken all of these resources and compiled them in a easy to access toolkit for staff via our intranet. The toolkit informs, you know, like has information about the drills, the policies, contact information, and some frequently asked questions. And I do want to give just a quick call out on this slide to the inclusion of board policies. The Board of Education votes on and adopts the policies that guide the district. I've included that in the next slide here, given that they directly impact the work of our safety and security team. And for anyone that might be watching, you know, these policies are publicly available, accessible on our website, and ensure consistency across the district as to how student discipline is handled, what constitutes, for example, a weapon, how we conduct safety screenings across all of our schools, as well as standards for behaviors for students and for staff. Lots to read here, but I'll kind of lift was the salient points. This list provides an overview of routine safety measures that are consistent across our district. Anyone who, for example, enters our schools is met by a safety officer who engages in our Raptor screening system using government issued ID. Our schools and buildings are closely monitored with over 1,500 cameras across the district, as well as updated alarm and control systems. We have a minimum of 2 school safety officers across at each of our buildings, district-wide, a total of 115 SSOs that complete mandated safety training, including crisis prevention intervention. We conduct unannounced safety screenings to check for weapons and other prohibited items. This includes no-touch wanding and bag checks. At times, we use canines to search lockers in a way that does not interfere with the school day, or that our students have interaction, students don't have interaction or come in close contact with any of the canines. This is done usually through what we call a code yellow designation. We purchased metal detectors in the fall that can be rotated through the district as a response to either if there's an incident or increased tension in a school, but also as part of our routine safety screenings. The metal detectors are usually more efficient in terms of the labor and the time than no touch wanding, because when we were doing those, right, we would have to redeploy safety officers from other schools, and so the metal detectors support us in that way as well. And I also want to note that we began working on this presentation as your request back in November, and so we're here, it's March, so we can say that we have seen the benefits of the increased safety screenings and the use of metal detectors. We're successfully discouraging students from bringing prohibited items into our buildings. Additionally, staff have told us that students are expressing that they feel safer with the presence of metal detectors in our schools. And so to ensure that the readiness of our staff and students, we also conduct drills on a regular basis, actually as mandated by the state. And also, right, due to the unfortunate times that we are living in, and to prepare for any potential active threat situation. This is a high-level overview of the drills required per state and federal regs, including fire drills and crisis response drills. I will note that an actual event like a fire or carbon monoxide alarm are not considered drills. That event will be incremental to what is required regarding the drills, right? First responders are notified prior to the drill, as our and families are made aware every time that a drill is completed. And I will say, unfortunately, we also need to prepare for the unlikely but most tragic of situations, an active threat or shooter in one of our buildings. And I need to start by saying that these are difficult, emotional conversations to have, but the tools our staff and teachers acquire through these trainings are absolutely crucial in making sure that they're better prepared, that we are all better prepared to protect our students and themselves and one another. These trainings have been conducted at the central office, at the school level, and have been led by our partners at the Hartford Police Department in partnership with our district safety team. And so, shout out to Lieutenant Reynolds and his entire team for conducting these trainings that included an introductory presentation on ALICE, right? You see what ALICE stands for there, right? Alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate, as well as on-site walkthroughs and situational training with our staff at the school sites. Most importantly, ALICE training is intended to ensure that staff understand that they have options in the event of an active threat situation, and building capacity in our staff so that they can recognize the best option available to protect themselves and students. And in the near future, we will be working with, we're going to be working to get school-based community partners also, who are, right, they're also responsible for student well-being. And so we want to get our community partners trained as well. So I just touched on one of the most important partnerships, but I want to spend a little more time explaining how we work with the Hartford Police Department, other partners, as well as the staff at Hartford Public Schools that are responsible, right? We have a shared response and responsibility towards safety. The structure of our school safety team is guided by state statute, is overseen by the principal at the school level site, who determines the timing of meetings, and consists of police, first responder, a teacher, an administrator, mental health professional, a parent or caregiver of an enrolled student, to ensure that student and family voice are represented in determining how we keep building safe, and any other person our teams deem necessary. This team is responsible for developing the plans and utilizes their school red book to make preparations in the event of an emergency. Every school has a red book that includes the policies, procedures, and protocols. And they're not necessarily responsible, nor are they solely responsible for the real-time response when a safety situation occurs. Community service officers are a crucial part of our school safety teams, as well as members of our community. Earlier this year, each school was provided with the names and contact information of the CSOs, the community service officers, assigned to their zone. And CSOs have had opportunities to meet with groups of principals to develop rapport, express opportunities to create a more efficient line of communication to prevent safety concerns in any of our school buildings. The meeting, the cadences, the frequency, the cadence of meetings, they've been established between leaders and the CSOs, so mutually beneficial information can flow between the two groups. CSOs have also had the opportunity to visit schools in a non-safety related capacity to build relationships with students and serve as yet another trusted adult in the school community. While this system has benefited our students, we understand that there are significant challenges that our partners at HPD have to contend with. We want to acknowledge understaffing, something that school districts across the country we are intimately familiar with. There's a concentration of need for services from HPD and not enough police officers. And HPS, we know that sometimes we're not their only priority. The other challenge is that each officer comes with a different approach to communication, right? So, each principal has a different approach, and each school presents a unique set of challenges and opportunities. And so it is so important for us to continue to sustain this partnership. And so we want to acknowledge and highlight how grateful we are for the partnership with HPD. And this is a small collection of some of the partners that we work with on a consistent basis to improve and support student well-being as part of our school safety process through restorative practices and access to mental health services, right? Peace builders, right? Improved, for example, a referral system and conflict resolution for students. Catholic charities, right? Overall support and well-being, including food security. Hartford PAL, building relationships between students and local law enforcement through athletics and activities. Connecticut Children's, counseling support and mental health services. The Say Something anonymous reporting system, right? It's available to students 24 hours, 7 days a week. Students and staff that have a safety concern or believe that a community member may harm themselves or others. And what we have discussed so far is meant to present how prevention of a safety situation or prepare anyone in the district accordingly when there's a safety event or an emergency. And so this is an overview of our district crisis team that is lead responsible for supporting our schools during and after a crisis event. And so I want to highlight that this is a comprehensive approach and shows, as you can see, right, representation from different offices in the district to ensure that our students and our staff receive the appropriate support. So we've included our Director of Student Support Services to focus on mental health and wellness, right, for staff and students. Executive Director of Security, Assistant Superintendent of Special Education, communications team members, to ensure timely information right, that flows to staff and to families and others. Again, right, a comprehensive approach to safety. And this is the last item I want to address, and is concerning our response to safety and security issues. That's how we handle communication in the event of an emergency situation. And I'm not going to go through all of the details, but as I just mentioned, communication, our communications department is a member of the district crisis team. So important information can get to our families and staff in a timely manner. And so building leaders can focus on the safety and the security of everyone in their building without any distraction. And so our communications team, right, is an added level of support. And they've developed templates to be used in case of an emergency. And right, they've trained principals and assistant principals on the appropriate sequencing of communications when a safety situation arises, and also supporting the community after an incident with communication. That was a mouthful and a lot of information. And I acknowledge that I was trying to balance all of the
Yes.
requests.
No, listen, Dr. Torres Rodriguez, I want to thank you for trying to tackle all of the amounts of questions. I think in the future, what we should do, seeing that the Board of Education is so large and there's so many different aspects of it, I think that what we can do is just focus more specifically. But what I will say is that what I'm thankful for is the council, my council colleagues being enthused that, with your attendance and wanting to engage with you and wanting to know what's going on. And I think overall, the spirit of everyone is wanting to support from the city side as best as possible. So with that being said, the superintendent had a long presentation, and I want to be mindful of time for everyone. So I think we have 3 council colleagues. Councilwoman Rossetti. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you very much. I know how difficult that is to try to touch on everything without having a 200-page PowerPoint. As you know, in the line of work I'm in, oftentimes something happens in the facility. I run a homeless facility, and you touched on, incidents either maybe happening or have happened. And my concern always afterwards is certainly things are taken care of, whether it's a potential overdose, but my concern always afterwards is how do we help the staff, work through that? People think you just are trained in this and then that's it, and it's a day and it's done. What do we do for staff and students, obviously, but for staff, that these lasting effects of these, whether they're happening in other cities around the country or, potentially happening here, what is it we're able to do for them?
Yeah, so I appreciate you lifting that, because when we engage the crisis team, we are thinking about students, families, and staff, and the response has to be different. We know that the triggers continue to happen. I will tell you that at SMSA, for example, right, those are still triggers that happen for a school community, right, that experience such trauma. And so we're mindful. We not only, employee assistance programming, but what is so good about the integrated approach that we're taking is that restorative circles, they're not just for our students. We encourage our staff and our school leaders to open open the day, for example, with a quick circle, or open a staff meeting with a circle, and create time, create space to go deeper into the conversations. You know, when we talk about the trauma-informed approach, it is not just for students, because we know that many of our staff, given the communities in which they serve, right, experience what is called, what you know well, tertiary, secondary and tertiary trauma. And so it continues to be an ongoing approach for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Torres. Always good to see you, and certainly appreciate. And I want to second what the chair said. I think it would be extremely helpful for this council, for any council, to perhaps have us break down, maybe quarterly a report. One quarter you just focus on your extracurricular, school sports, music, arts, etc. One quarter you focus on school safety. It's not whatever. Maybe we talk about that. But in any event, you're here tonight, so I got a couple of questions for you. And I just want to go back to the safety aspect for a moment, but I want to look at it in a slightly different manner. I want to talk about safety in the classroom, between the students, among fellow students in the classroom, and the teacher in relation to those students, and kind of recognizing. I mean, you've noted, our statistics note that we do have some children with a lot of needs. In some cases, we have children. I don't think I'm overstating the case to say that Hartford probably has a higher percentage of children with needs in its classrooms than almost any other school district in the state. And I imagine that produces some issues for teachers in keeping keeping the class together so that instruction can take place. And so I'm just wondering to what extent your team is looked at that and has comparison data for how we are doing in the classroom vis-a-vis other districts, and what tools we're providing to the teachers to give them the training to be able to, how do you deal with Johnny, who's acting out over in this corner and trying to keep somebody in the other corner at bay. And I'm imagining that all of this plays into the concern that we have of losing students. You noted the huge increase in the amount of students that are now going out of district, and I'm imagining that to some degree this is parents and students reacting and saying they're looking for a different classroom experience. I don't know that that's this is a particular driver, but I'm sure everything plays into everything. In any event, I'm throwing that out there for you to ask you what thoughts do you have?
A lot of thoughts, and to your most recent, your latest comment there around the driver, it is one of the drivers. You're absolutely right. We hear it here. I hear it with, at other magnet operators, that the way that some of our behaviors, right, the behaviors are showing up, present, right, a barrier for other families in terms of school choice. I will say that while I haven't looked to other districts to see what they're experiencing, I have heard and have had conversations with colleague superintendents that post-COVID, the behaviors have been something that some of us had not expected. I mean, we knew that given the loss that some of our families and students have experienced, given the time that students were away in the isolation and how that impacted their development and their emotions, that we were going to see some challenges. It is still happening in some of our classrooms. And you asked the question as to what are we doing to support teachers? It's that, and because we do want to support teachers with strategies, but we also want to support more holistically. So we've added, for example, 20 additional social workers. We have partnerships with a partner called Effective School Solutions, where they focus on students that have a higher level of incidence. And so they're focusing directly with those students and with the family. We have our community partners. And we have been looking at our data, and our data do show that there has been an increase of incidents of what we call low-level incidents, but over a period of time, they accumulate and they result in added suspensions. And so we see it, right? Suspensions have increased all across the district. And so that's a key flag for us that, right, students are experiencing difficulty, and that we have to support not just them, but teachers as well. And it's a fine balance because, right, we know that we're trying to support students, but also do that in a way that doesn't become exclusionary in a way, right? And so having these other supports, the extracurriculars, while I know that doesn't address the behavior in the moment, it does give a student an opportunity to have an outlet. It does give a student an opportunity to excel in a different way. And most importantly, it does give an opportunity to have a relationship with, right, their peers and with a trusted adult as well, which we know all of those become protective factors that, right, ultimately are going to support students. So Councilman Gale, I wish I had a switch, right, that or one answer, but some of it is so complex because when we get closer to the situation, we find out that for some students, the fact that they were away or interrupted learning for over 2 years, it means that they're not able to, right, they're not able to access what's in front of them in terms of the instruction. Some of our students have a hard time regulating that, right? There's frustration that comes up for them because, right, they might not be able to pronounce, the word that's in front of them. And so that shows up in a different way. They act out in a different way. And as we progress, we want to make sure that we are showing also students how to develop not just a self-regulation, but how it is that they should manage in a situation like that, because, right, they can escalate and it can become challenging, not just instructionally, but, right, from a safety perspective as well. The other piece is the family. We want to engage the family or the caregiver as well. And we find, for example, as we were looking at the data around chronic absenteeism, that sometimes is correlated with students that, right, have been suspended. We find that some of our families are also saying we need help. We as parents need help on, right, how to support the students and deal with the behavior.
Well, I too wish you had that switch. I'd be happy if I had the switch and could give it to you, and as I'm sure the rest of my colleagues do. And certainly I think we all fully appreciate that. There are so many different factors that go into all of this. So the classroom management being one, but to your point, engaging the students to be part of a community being another. And so I want to just kind of turn to a little bit about the what you talked about at the beginning of your presentation in terms of the school sports and the extracurricular activities that you've got going on. And I want to applaud you tremendously. This has been certainly an area that I've been keenly pushing and enthusiastic about. And just as a quick side note, I'm the kind of guy who pays attention to when one of our schools does well. And I noted that Weaver basketball got into the tournament. Sadly, they lost to Griswold and won't be moving on. But kudos to them for getting in there. And I'm an old guy, so I read the Hartford Current every day. I get the print edition, and I look at the local sports to see how are Hartford Public Schools doing. And, not only in basketball, football, and baseball, but soccer. And do we have a wrestling team? Do we have a swimming team? You see these suburban schools that got lacrosse teams and hockey teams. I mean, it'd be great if we could compete in all of those. But I'm just happy to hear you talk about that and talk about the need to improve that. I do concur with you that it gives a kid a greater relationship to the school. And, you know, as we've mentioned, we certainly, it would be extremely helpful if our schools get to a point where we're recruiting kids and they're not looking to go out of district, and you could reduce that 24% that are going out of district back down to 9% because they want to stay in the Hartford schools. And I know you've heard me say this before, that one of the issues that the acronym I use is that in the Hartford schools, we want the same thing as all the suburban schools. Same being S for sports, art, A for arts, M for music, and E for extracurricular, so that you keep these kids. And I want to just sort of end my comments in this by mentioning to you that this council is keenly interested in recreation as just another component. And you've mentioned it in terms of the school sports, but we're looking at it from both adult recreation as well as youth recreation, and the ability, and we're going to come back to you, not tonight, but at some point. We're hopeful. I can't discern exactly how council's going to go on this, but I know from my perspective, and I do believe there's some support for this, we'd like to get a more robust recreation department going that does in fact work with the schools, gets an idea of what facilities the school has that the schools have that aren't being used, when they're not being used, and how we can program them to make them available for all those students, but also for their parents and the greater community. So a lot to say there about recreation. I'll give you an opportunity to comment on any of it.
Well, you talked about some of the sports that we don't have, and we don't have wrestling, but which, you know, we're working on it, but it's been a work in progress over the years, right? When we were in a situation in which not all of our high schools had the basic sports. And so, right, we can say that we do across high schools and middle schools, and now, right, inching back to our elementaries. And to your point around making it accessible to our families and our community, that is great. You know, some might have heard me talk about the need for the macro systems to cohere a little more and in support of families and communities. So sounds like what you were describing.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, a couple of other points that hopefully will be
Sure. Just be mindful of the time, Councilman Gale.
I understand, but it's not often we get the superintendent here, Mr. Chair. You know, two comments for you, Superintendent. One, you know, I was paying close attention to your budget deliberations, and I noted your transportation budget has just continued to balloon. Based on the figures that I saw, I think it's $27 million for transportation. I divided that by 100. You know, here's my Hartford Public High School education, mind you. I did some math. So I divided that transportation budget by 180 days, and I got $150,000 as the number that we're spending per day to transport children around the city of Hartford. And I don't know how many students that's actually serving, and I'm not asking you to provide that data, but the quick thought I had was, oh my God, is there any ability to look at alternative ways of transporting children? Would vouchers, give a kid a voucher and let themselves get to the school, save us any money or save the transportation costs? Because $150,000 a day just seemed like a lot of money. But I just throw that out there for you for consideration. And the last comment I have for you is that I wish you a tremendous amount of success at the legislature, and want you to use us and our Hartford delegation. And if you find that any of the Hartford delegation is not supporting you, come back and let us know, among others, in terms of getting equity on special education. It seems to me there should not be any argument that the city of Hartford should not have to spend any more than any surrounding town does for base education. And above that, what a child needs for special education should be funded by all of us. These are not Hartford problems. These are Connecticut problems, these need to be shared equitably around the state. And it's shameful that somebody feels that we should be stuck with the entire price tag for taking care of these, these children that have these special needs. So I
Yes.
wish you a lot of success in that.
Yes, agreed, Councilman Gale, agreed. Councilwoman Surgeon?
Mr. Chair, I am not going to be long-winded. Because Dr. Rodriguez, thank you so very much. It was a great presentation. And I will have to commend you on one thing. We beat Bloomfield. When Bloomfield adopted their budget, nobody showed up. And I want to let you know, I was one of the 16 people on the screen, even though I couldn't vote, when you did your budget, the Board of Education did the budget presentation. So it is really nice, to tell my friends in the other towns that we have much participation. Thank you very much. And you guys did an excellent job. And I want to thank you very much for coming. While you were doing your presentation, a couple of residents have been watching this, believe it or not, Mr. Chair. And they always text me their questions. So I'm gonna hold my questions because I'm going to see you again in another month or so for our budget presentation. So I'll hold my question. I will just read their question.
Oh, people watch.
They
FYI.
do.
Oh, I
So
know.
it says, okay, the first question is, please have the superintendent clarify if the school use after hours is free, or do those providing activities have to rent the facilities?
That is a little bit of both. So for example, some of our community partners, as part of our community school framework, they have, as part of the funding, to be included there. There are others like, the football, help me, Councilman LeBron, one of the
Hartford Hurricanes.
The Hurricanes, yes.
Yeah.
Right, they have to pay for use, and that is inclusive of security and custodial fees that we have to cover.
Okay, thank you. Also, will the slide presentation be available? Much of the content is being covered by Zoom gallery on the HPA-TV broadcast. So, Mr. Chair, through you, will the superintendent provide the slide so we could send it to the residents who are looking to have that?
Absolutely.
One last question. Oh, geez, I'm going to say one last question. I'm not doing any more questions. She keeps texting me. Okay, so please share the comment. ALICE acronym is now used for income classification and safety response. Might this be confusing for some?
Interesting. Yes, it might. However, while ALICE is not, we don't own the acronym. We can probably be more intentional when we announce it, that make the distinction explicitly that this is in relation to safety, not right the other one. So I appreciate that distinction.
Yeah. Our residents do listen.
I love it.
Yeah. I love it. I think that's a perfect, because when we actually had thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon. Thank you. I'm sorry. Was that it, Councilwoman?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna.
Oh, okay.
We'll do budget hearing.
It's wonderful with the ALICE, because they had an ALICE training earlier at one of our schools, and initially I thought it was the income ALICE. And so, that confused me too. But anyway, so Dr. Torres, I just two comments. So the first thing is, Councilman Gale, the same acronym, that sounds like a great platform, right? To run on, right? Somebody with educational policy and all that good stuff. I love it. Stealing it shamelessly. I'm just letting you know now, right in front of everybody.
You can steal it. It's the Hartford Party's platform. It's on the web. Go for it.
Yeah, all right. Dr. Torres Rodriguez, I think the biggest question, and I know you're going to come back later, and me being involved in education, I think we should definitely have a conversation offline. My biggest thing is who's looking out for our interests at the state level? Do we pay for lobbyists? How does that work? How do we, get a return on investment? As a grassroots community organizer, I remember fighting for different legislation, rallying families, doing those types of works. And so the question I have is like, who is swinging punches for us, for our Hartford public school system at the state level?
Great question. We do have a lobbyist, and right, we maintain in regular communication and contact. I was actually there today discussing the bill that I referenced. And our delegation, you know, we do our outreach and we connect, and then right, we don't know what happens behind the scenes. So I heard loud and clear in terms of from Councilman Gale in terms of what else can we do to support. And so I encourage all of you to also advocate on behalf of not just that bill, but the special education piece, which is so significant for us. I think it merits additional conversation and collectively having a shared agenda around education.
Is there a particular bill number?
HB 5003 is yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yes, Dr. Torres. So, you know, I think that's a bigger thing in terms of if we're getting, you know, all of those things. I know HB 5003, but we'll talk offline, and thank you for sharing that. And I assume we share that with the city, like with the city of Hartford. Is that the same lobbyist? Or is
I understand I understand it's the same lobbyist, although right, we pay separately.
Right.
But I understand it's the same.
But do we get a deal like 2 for 1, or is it buy one, get one free, or?
We can talk about that later.
You know, do we get a supersize? We get a, anyway, let me stop. It's getting late. So with that being said, and seeing no more questions, Dr. Torres Rodriguez, I hope you feel the spirit and the energy of our council colleagues here, wanting to really partner with you, wanting to know more, you know, we could just have regular conversations. We could be more specific. And I'll make sure that I corral the questions for the next time, so that way we could be more intentional and diving deep. But, you know, the spirit is of partnership and collaboration.
Certainly felt that, and I
Yes.
appreciate that as well. So I'll be
No
back.
problem. All right. Wonderful. Listen, with that being said, peace and love to everyone, and have a good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Night.
Bye.
Mhm.